Oh, you've just put us live.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. We're live now. Good evening, everyone joining us for the Ring20 big announcement and AGM. I'm Neil White, hosting the event. We're just seeing our attendees join us now. For those who haven't been on a webinar before, it is watching us at this stage, and when we get to the points where there are opportunities to ask us questions or ask our panelists any questions, will allow you to access your microphones. On Zoom, you've also got the question and answer box, so you'll be able to ask us any questions as we go through the opportunity. And we also hope to record and share and stream the announcement and the meeting via our social media channels. So just going to give it a few minutes to make sure everybody that wanted to join has joined, and then we'll start.
Hello again. Sorry, it took me so long to get into this meeting.
Thank you. I'm just introducing our technical expert for this evening, Jake. Those that joined the quiz will remember Jake and Caliph hosting with their fantastic shirts and backgrounds. So Jake is going to drive the Zoom system for us this evening. Right, we're coming up to 5 past, so we'll make a start for this evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending our special announcement this evening. I appreciate as winter's drawing in and with the COVID pandemic, 2020 has brought a lot of changes for us all. And our ability to stay safe. So I'm grateful for all of the volunteers that have put a lot of effort into this event tonight. Over the course of the next hour, we've got some exciting news to share with you about our activities for 2021 and how you all will play a part in our success and in some of the exciting activities that we want to undertake with you all. The course of the event will see us hear from a number of speakers and will also allow us to run through some formalities for the event, our AGM and our accounts for the year, and we feel it's a real excellent opportunity for you to hear about how the charity is structured, how it is managed, and what are our plans financially for the next year. It's also a special time in the year because of an individual who had, alongside Alison, devoted a lot of time to Ring20, and Don, as our chair, helped to take the charity from its concept through to where it is today. Don and I are swapping shoes, metaphorically, and I'm taking on the role of chair. And I thought it would be a fantastic opportunity to introduce Don, thank him on behalf of the charity, and allow him to bring the year to a close for 2020. Don, good evening.
So if I've been unmuted, can everybody hear me?
We can.
Very good. So a great welcome to everybody. I see we've got 6 participants on this call. So a very big welcome to you all. Many of you probably know who I am and what I've been doing, and that we've probably met on 1 or 2 various occasions or events that have gone on down through the years. And it gives me great honor and privilege to be able to really hand over to a new chair after, you know, the past 6 years or more. I've been involved with Ring20. I've had the privilege of traveling all over the world, speaking to medical professionals and practitioners, many of you whom you know, all the way from Japan to Canada to America and South Africa, Australia. So, you know, it's a big community, and it's a growing community despite being a rare disease. We consider ourselves to, you know, be a very worthy group, and I think that it's a fantastic opportunity to let everybody know where we are now. So despite, you know, everything that's going on in the background with the pandemic that Neil mentioned, I think that we can take a lot of satisfaction from where we are and the position that we're in right now, because I know that there are a lot of exciting things on the agenda. So I think it's a very exciting time. So, you know, I just wanted to welcome the new trustees that we have, which is Neil and Lydia and Kim, I think, as well. So lovely to see you here tonight, Kim, as well. You know, we've got a great bank of new volunteers come on board. We've got Caliph, Vidya, Claire, Jake, that have already been mentioned. And of course, Alison and I have spent many journeys along the way. The Ring20 journey has been, you know, a really fantastic journey, and it's not ending here. So what I'd like to say in very short terms is the journey isn't over. It's very much yet to be continued. There's some very eminent professionals coming on board, and I think I'm not going to elaborate on that, because I want to leave Neil and to be able to do that and share, and Alison as well, to share what's coming. So, you know, I feel very proud and happy that I'm able to leave the charity in such good form, and I won't be entirely without presence. So whatever capacity that is, I'll be watching from the wings. So I'm looking for exciting things, but not in so much a senior management role, if you will. So I'm going to hand over because there's quite a lot to get through tonight. So thank you all so much. All the very best. And Neil, it's over to you. Lost the audio.
Am I there? Am I back?
You're back.
I'm back. There we are. Thank you, Don, and thank you for your time. And certainly your role in the charity is not escaping, and the trustees would like to bestow the honour of patron of Ring20 to recognise all of the work that you have undertaken and allow you to continue with some of the fantastic engagement and worldwide engagement that you do. So we'd be extremely grateful if you would continue to support us as the charity's patron. Thumbs up from Don. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right, I'm being told I need to get back to the running order, so welcome all families. Maestro, if we could have the first poll for the audience, please. A little bit of an icebreaker to set the scene and find out where you're all from today. There we are. So first question, what is your connection to Ring20? There's various options there. The next question, where are you joining us from in the world today? So make your choice there, and we'll find out where our audience is from today. You can tell I lack the presenting skills of Anton Deck or Bruce Forsyth. I need some jokes written from my writing team. There we are. Are we able to have the results on the poll? Fantastic. Well, there we are. Family interest at 71%, Ring20 patients and supporters as well. And great to see that we have audiences further afield in Europe and in the United States, and also from the UK. So that's fantastic, and really shows the reach of the charity. So at this stage, we're going to hand over to Alison to bring the activities of Ring20 to the surface and formally sign off the year that has gone by. Alison.
Thank you very much, Neil, and hi to everybody. So I'm going to take you through a few of the real highlights. This is really our report on the year to March 2020, so earlier this year, when we were all suddenly pulled into this pandemic that has dictated our lives for the best part of this year. But do you know what, at Ring20 we had quite a fantastic year leading up to that, and we've had some wonderful things happening beyond whilst we've been in this difficult times, and we've got some really exciting stuff coming up too. So I think in terms of one of our real big highlights of 2019, we kicked off with our ketogenic dietary therapy workshop, where we were joined by Ring20 families, by researchers from PLRH. We had research professionals, doctors and epilepsy nurses and ketogenic dietitians who joined us, and we reviewed the wonderful results that came through from both you, our families, and also from our healthcare professional surveys, and looked at all the information and data that we gathered, and we pulled this together. And this was a fantastic initiative that had been started in the previous year by Don as part of his degree. And we completed that and culminated that within the year of 2019 by publishing a wonderful research paper, our first ever Ring20 research paper, publishing the results of that survey. So it's a great collaboration between Ring20 families and Ring20 professionals, and hopefully the start of many more to come. I think then many of you will remember that later in the year, in November 2019, we had our wonderful Ring20 comic workshop. 2 years after our first ever Ring20 Families Conference, we brought together 15 Ring20 families from the UK and Europe, who we all joined together at Birmingham City Football Club for a wonderful day, hosted and brought together by Rossi from Deco Comics, who entertained us and got us all drawing pictures and coming up with all our wonderful ideas on the sticky boards, and a truly interactive day for all the family to bring together just such a great initiative to create patient information booklets by families for Ring20 families. And hopefully, I hope each and every one of you Ring20 families has now received in the post your complimentary copies of those booklets, both for yourselves, for your families, carers to share, and also to share with your healthcare teams. And also our healthcare professionals, I hope, have all received their copies in the post too. And we'd really love your feedback. What do you think, what we came up with? I also just want to share with you, these are some of the wonderful drawings and illustrations. It truly was some wonderful ideas that came through, really innovative. I didn't realise how creative everybody was. It's fantastic. And we launched our character competition, and our winner here was Otzi, our character in the middle, designed by Georgina Clunas. And I hope some of you have spotted Otzi in the second older comic, and she features, or it features, sorry, she is genderless. Otzi features in that comic, so see if you can spot her in a few places. But we had some great entrants, so thank you all of you that participated there. And here were our wonderful comics that you've all received, and we couldn't have hosted our workshop or the comics without this some of the support of the pharma companies. So we'd like to say thank you to Ovid Therapeutics, GW Pharmaceuticals and UCB for helping us to pull this together. And then pretty much straight after that workshop event, it was a busy end to 2019 for all of us. We held our Big Give Christmas Challenge. Now, some of you may remember that we were working on this wonderful fundraising campaign from the summer through to the first week of December for a big match funding donations week. And we raised a fantastic, almost £9,500, including gift aid, which is absolutely phenomenal. And this money is set aside for our next Families Conference, which, had we not been in a pandemic, would have been in October this year. But we have provisionally set aside a placeholder for October next year in Brighton. So we're hoping that, pandemic and travel allowances and everything willing, funding, etc., we will be able to meet again next year. Okay, well, that's a wonderful celebration of last year. And, you know, we've been busy since March getting those comics out to you. With your comics, I hope some of you have seen a survey that was posted out to you. Please do fill in that survey and send it back to us. We really appreciate your feedback on what we're doing here at Ring20, and that will help us to shape what we do in the future. So for all of our members, you know, do have your say on what you think about us and what we do, and anything you'd like more of, and we'll see if we can support that. And hopefully you've seen our newsletters too. So you know, again, let us know what you think, and you know, we'll see what we can get out to you in the future. But without further ado, I think I'm going to hand back to Neil, because it's big announcement time. So thank you.
Thank you, Alison. It feels like I needed some kind of theme music there to introduce the big announcement. So our teams have been working hard to unveil what the announcement is, and I'm grateful for all the graphics and materials that go out to you regularly to try and set some pretense to what we're going to discuss today. We've invited some very special esteemed guests to speak to you all this evening, covering a wide range of medical fields in epidemiology, research and science. We want to take you on a journey, a pathway, if you like, that we hope will give you a bright future for all those living with Ring20 syndrome all around the world. We start the big announcement with a patient journey. As an NHS clinician, I am always proud to present patient stories across the organisation and learn from lived experience. And I'm delighted tonight to welcome Catherine Yeager, who joins us from Canada this evening. Catherine is a recent graduate of the veterinary office management and is a proud single mum of 2, but also a Ring20 patient herself. And Catherine is going to share with us her story this evening. Welcome, Catherine.
Hello.
Hello, Catherine.
Hi.
Good evening.
Thank you again for that lovely introduction. I am so humbled that I can speak to everyone today. My journey of, I guess I would always considered it a roller coaster, has definitely been something that has grown with me to a point when I have finally found the R20 research and support, have been able to kind of really show exactly what it is that I've actually had all these years of my life. When I was 11 years old, that would have been about 21 years ago, I was just a normal, very healthy, sporty, active kid. And I had straight A's. You wouldn't have thought of me as anybody else with any health conditions whatsoever. And I started to have these strange episodes that my parents couldn't really understand what was going on. And it was suggested after some seizures that I had at my dancing class, take your daughter in, something's going on. So I was immediately diagnosed with epilepsy, and this kind of came out of a huge blue. How do you go from this healthy child to full-blown uncontrollable epileptic seizures? It was just, no history or anything like that, so didn't know where it came from. So I don't really remember too much of that year. I just know that I had to stop doing sports, pretty much everything I loved. Knowing how I was able to go from, being ahead of my class with math to trying to figure out what 5 plus 3 was. I remember being asked by my teacher, what's 5 plus 3? And I wouldn't know, and I would have to actually count with my fingers. Like, my intellectual abilities just decreased so fast, and I had no understanding of why this was happening. So I had to actually relearn all my mathematical skills, relearning adding and subtracting and multiplication. It affected all, that particular side of the brain that deals with math and science. And it was hard. I didn't, I felt like, I'm just the same as everybody else. Why do I have to? I mean, nothing made any sense. So for the past years after that, constantly medication after medication, even going on to some adult medications. And as an 11-year-old, it was pretty tough. And doctors to doctors. I lived in Halliburton, so it would take 3 to 4 hours to go from my countryside to Toronto weekly. My family sacrificed just to get some answers, So I went to do a EMU study, and they knew there was something odd about my brain, but they couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, because the seizures seemed to have come off differently each time. And they would also sometimes look like they were generalized, and then all of a sudden it was focal at one point. They tried to make a distinguish if I would be able to be a surgery candidate, but the scans at the time just could not pinpoint a proper access location. So I grew up most of my life having to deal with the struggles of being able to accommodate for myself for all the things that I've had to relearn. And, when I was 11, I literally had to ask myself what my success in life would be. I didn't think I would have to do that when I was 11. but that's what it felt like. So over time, high school and getting into college, I was able to kind of show that through perseverance, I would be able to get past that. So now growing up, and I'm out and into college, still have uncontrolled seizures, trying different medications, tried a couple neurologists who just kind of just wanted to push things off to the side because they really didn't know what to do with it, and thought, well, this is just what you have. You have an uncontrolled seizure disorder. All we can do is just hope for the best with whatever medication we throw at you. And that's kind of what I felt. I felt like a guinea pig for a lot of that time, and just guessing on my health, especially as I became a mom. It wasn't the best thing because I needed to be not just healthy for myself, but healthy for my family. And my family has sacrificed a lot in dealing with what I have. And the past few years have been particularly difficult because symptoms that I have been having are hard to pinpoint whether they were resulting from my epilepsy or not. I was paralyzed waist down after I had my second child. No clue why. All of a sudden, the functions, the joints stopped moving, everything. Could that have been something going on neurologically? I'm not sure, because no one had any understanding of why. Nothing showed in the scans. Nothing ever seems to show in the scans. And as I was on a walker, I had 2 stroke-like episodes. Again, the brain didn't necessarily show there was a stroke, but something was going on. Obviously, I was having the exact same. Where does it come from? Again, scans don't particularly show anything, but it's got to come from somewhere. So I pressed really hard for a long time for those answers, and I would come up with unusual things from vertigo to hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, like just something that would not make sense if I didn't have something else. So lots of MRIs, lots of scans, and it's difficult because there's something wrong, but when you can't find something on a scan, to a doctor, from at least what I'm told, well, we don't see anything, so it must be in your head. And I remember the second time I had my stroke event, I was laying there unable to talk, and the doctor came over and said, this is a waste of time. Next time this happens, just go see a psychiatrist. So it was at that point, and I couldn't defend myself. So it was at that point where everything I was experiencing was all of a sudden reverting to, this is in your head. You're this, obviously you're making this up. None of this is real. You need psychiatry. So it was really hard searching all these years for answers and not having anything, only to be told, well, it's in your head. So I was sent to psychiatry. I was, I was tested. Well, your brain's probably just wanting to say that there's something there because who knows? If they can't think of an answer, they'll make one up. I decided to change my neurologist to this person, Dr. Edward Bercovici. He's astounding. He's one of the best in Ontario, here in Canada. And he fought to have more specific testing done. And when I did that, I had magnetic resonating scan that showed something very odd. They were seizures that were happening in 2 specific parts of my brain, but they were so close together that it almost as if the two brains were merging, and I was having focal and generalized. So they're wondering, how can this be? You're refractory, but all of this is happening, you know, usually you'd have one or the other. So after having that, he said, I think we need to have some kind of genetic testing done to see what, you know, I need more information, because what we have just isn't going to tell us more than what we have. And by pushing that, he decided he wanted to have the karyotype of genetic testing. And it was through him that I got a phone call to come in. And instead of talking about possible new medications or surgeries, we talked about a genetic condition, Ring20. And I am just sitting there completely in shock, wondering, are you saying this whole, like, what? This whole time this was this was a chromosomal issue? Everything that I've experienced have likely all been cut. This syndrome. And I just kind of sat back, and my parents like, it's okay, you're justified with how you've been, with all those doctors that said that it's in your head, you're justified. It hurts. And I feel now, looking at other patients, medically refractory epilepsy, also don't have answers and are also positive. Can this not be just genetic testing? Can it not be something mandatory for those who develop epilepsy to have, in order to? Because if I knew this was this diagnosis was about 20 years in the making, and until then, you know, my life could have been so much different if I had known this information. I could have had different kind of look into my treatment. I take cannabis oil now, and it has hugely changed my seizure dynamic. And I no longer have I used to have 40-minute seizures. At least they said it looked like 40-minute. It was more just a whole bunch going on for that length of time. But now I barely have any at all. And it's using the ketogenic diet has been a big help as well. It's kind of starting, it's slow going, but it's starting to get there. And I just, if I didn't press for those answers, and I didn't press for a neurologist, I would still be stuck in uncontrollable seizures, unable to be with my children the way I want them to be. And I wouldn't be living a fuller life like the one I'm having now. So I guess just, I know I'm going on and on, but this, long story short, I really hope that more recognition of these Ring20 chromosome and other ones like it, if there's a way to finally get them seen faster than what I was producing, because it was on a whim and a chance that I was given the opportunity to do a genetic test. And I would be interested to find out how many more people there are out there that actually have this, but don't know it just because they haven't had the chance to prove it through something as like genetic testing. So.
And that's really interesting, Catherine, and thank you for sharing your story. And certainly the challenge and the frustration that patients feel when medicine doesn't have the answer, and it can be torturous to go through diagnosis where particularly psychiatry comes in as the default option when when there isn't a medical answer. And that takes us on to the announcement today and what Catherine said about genetic testing and the role genetic testing plays in the Ring20 chromosome diagnosis. And it really, I reflected that it came on a pivotal day because I have been heavily involved in the government's response to the coronavirus pandemic and have led teams of scientists and researchers push all boundaries of knowledge and technology to develop the vaccine that was given to the first patients in anger this morning. And as I introduce our next guests from our strategic partner Illumina, and Alison will share how our partnership with Illumina came to be and the work that we will want to do with Illumina. I think there's opportunities for the organisation to develop new tests, make a new difference for patients and explore the chromosome in ways that we couldn't previously have imagined. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce both Charlene and David from Illumina, but also Alison to introduce how the partnership with Illumina came to be.
Thank you, Neil. Hi again, everybody. So we talked at the beginning of this section about a journey, a pathway to the future. And just about a year ago, just over a year ago, I was invited to speak at Cambridge Rare Disease Network biannual Rare Summit, which is a rare disease event bringing together patient organisations, researchers, healthcare professionals, scientists, academics, industry, to talk about rare diseases and opportunities and challenges, and to work together to forge new ways forward, to find new innovative ideas. And I spoke about the challenges that we face as a Ring20 community, and it's stories just like Catherine's, from the individuals and the member families, over 120 of you that we support around the world, that has really touched me and caused me to pursue this mission with, you know, the great passion that I do, to speak on your behalf and to enlighten the world to the various challenges that Ring20 presents. And what you can see on the screen is one of the slides. And as I was presenting and talking, I explained that we have no treatments available, and there's no treatments because nothing seems to work. There are no clinical practice guidelines for doctors to follow, so everything's trial and error. We have no patient registry, so we don't know how many Ring20 patients are really out there in the world or where they're located. You know, research is very limited, and our families have never been given the opportunity to be involved in any clinical trials for new therapies for rare epilepsies. And this particular meeting was held at the Wellcome Genome campus. And if any of you know, that is the home of the 100,000 Genomes project. And in the UK, several years ago, our Prime Minister at the time actually created this project that the UK would be the world leader in genomics and sequencing the human genome to discover new diagnoses for people with rare diseases. And I rather cheekily took the opportunity to this audience to speak and to state that here we are in the world's hub of genomics, and yet you can't yet sequence a ring chromosome. and you can't identify or diagnose that, particularly in the mosaic form. And I laid down the gauntlet to that audience that day. And I was actually quite shocked when, as we walked out in the break from that panel discussion, I was approached by two gentlemen from Illumina who wanted to speak to me straight away. And they said, we listened to hear what you had to say, and we'd really like to talk to you some more. And I was very happy to have them interested in what we had to say, and thinking that they might be interested in talking to us and seeing what might be possible. So we opened up a dialogue. One of those guys was Tim, and Tim went back to the office, and his colleague, Shirlene, was also filming with one of our member families, coincidentally, for a different project. And Tim and Shirlene spoke, and over the last year, we've then been engaged in various conversations to see how we might work together, how we might collaborate to improve the diagnostic odyssey, that long journey of sometimes many years. I mean, Catherine's case, 20 years is extreme, but several years is not unusual in the Ring20 community, and many of our diagnoses are by chance. And actually, if I show you a quick slide here, based on the member feedback that you gave us recently, the cases of Ring20 being diagnosed has actually been reasonably in decline since 2010. And that actually goes completely against rare disease diagnostics. With next generation sequencing, we would expect to see the numbers of diagnoses increasing in rare diseases like ring chromosome 20. But as you can see on this slide, apart from 2019, there's been a steady decline. And that's worrying. And that is why I think that I'm really, really pleased to say that we are now about to start to work together with Illumina. And at that point, I'd like to hand over to Shirlene Badger, patient engagement lead for Illumina, and Dr. David Bentley, the chief scientist from Illumina, to talk to you a little bit more about the collaborative project that we want to engage in together from 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison, and thank you for that introduction. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all tonight. So as Alison mentioned, we kind of responded, I think, to a presentation that she gave. And as she said, at the same time, I was meeting with a family who I think are on this call, actually. And so was hearing more of their story too around the process that they had been involved in getting diagnosis. So David is going to talk to you a little bit about what we're planning on doing, but I just want to introduce us a little bit. So some of you might know of Illumina, others of you might not have any clue what we do. Our mission is to unlock the power of the genome to improve human health. And hopefully, as David talks, we'll explain a little bit about what that means. But so much of what you said, Catherine, really resonated with me. And I hear stories like yours constantly. We completely understand your desire for genetic testing to be more prevalent, or just to be known, or to be, as you said, to be faster, to be not so much a women a chance, something that happens as a par for the course in order for people to get diagnoses so that we can understand and know what is actually going on with people like yourself, Catherine. So I'm going to hand over to David for a little bit, but what we want to do is unlock two key phases that we are hoping to do, and David's going to talk about the big picture, and then I'll come back and explain, I guess, the step-by-step approaches that we're going to get there, how we're going to get there. And we've got some other speakers who will also highlight the interactions that this will have across other initiatives as well. So it's my great pleasure to introduce my colleague David to speak to you now.
Okay, thank you very much, Shirley. Hopefully you can all hear me. Nod, Shirley. Yeah, good. It's a remarkable disconnect with the Zoom presentations, but I'm delighted to be part of this group, and thank you very much for the invitation. And indeed, the tremendous and tear-jerking story of Catherine, which I'm sure is shared by many, and if not all of you. I should also say it goes beyond Ring20, of course, because the story of the diagnostic odyssey is actually very prevalent. There are many rare genetic diseases, all of which should respond to a genomic test. And ultimately, we hope we will have all the answers, but today we do not. To give you a piece of history, seeing as Alison has brought it up, I actually was an academic for 25 years, and I was a founder member of the Wellcome Trust Genome Campus. And together, a very small group of us appealed for money to get involved and sequence the first human genome, which was a very tremendous time at that campus. Most of the buildings were not there to start with, but they did eventually develop. And we sequenced the human genome in order to set the stage for what we knew would come, although we did not know what it looked like. And I think this is the point that we have come to. Events like this, appeals like this, and new friendships like this, which really will make a difference. So yes, I was involved in establishing the Institute to sequence the human genome. Later, indeed, I was one of the ones who met with David Cameron to persuade him, and he didn't need much persuading, to actually invest in the 100,000 genomes. And it was my team who built a new building, new laboratory, to actually carry out the 100,000 genomes. But that again was another foundation. We were learning how to sequence genomes, not just one genome to have a look as a researcher, but we were learning how to sequence the genomes of individuals so that we could tell more about those people, because every person is made up of a unique genetic code. It determines who you are. It doesn't determine all your behaviors and what you acquire during life. It does determine the deck of cards you are dealt at birth, what your parents pass on to you genetically, and some changes that occur during that process. And these are very important areas where we still only understand something of the rudiments of those changes and how to understand them. But that's exactly what we're trying to do and what we'd like to do here. We certainly thought when we sequenced the genome, back in fact, around 2000 was the announcement of the first draft of the human genome. We felt we were opening a door to many new medical tests and medical improvements and ultimately medical treatments. And ultimately, I think that is still what we hope will happen. In this case, Ring20 brings us back down to earth with a bump, because here is a disease that is definitely of the genome. And we've sequenced almost every base in the genome. And we still don't know anything much about Ring20. And what is worse, I think, is that the progress not only sees a reduction in diagnosis, which Alison just showed, but research in the genome is actually diminishing the very test that was the answer for Catherine. I think the carrier type that she mentioned, I believe, is a test that is actually being discontinued in many areas, and yet the genome does not fill the gap. That is what this conversation for me is all about. How can we bring everything we think we know about the genome and to tackle the unknown, the things that we don't know about the genome in connection to with Ring20? And so that is, if you will, the bigger picture. The clues come from, as indeed Catherine has already said, that if you don't have a diagnosis, you are led to all sorts of places and people give up, people lose faith. I counted several clinicians there that Catherine recounted who just didn't know what to do because they didn't understand the cause of the disease. They couldn't see it, whether it was in the brain or whether it was in the genes and the genome. And so they rather gave up. And that's what we want them to stop doing. We want to give them a test that does give an answer. And it takes a week to sequence a genome, not 20 years. Well, not anymore. It did, but it doesn't anymore. And so to sequence a person's genome, to have that test, whether it's mandatory or whether it's advised by somebody who knows about it, the answer can be achieved in a week. And if we get a lot of requests, it might be a few weeks. But this is really addressing the question of the diagnostic odyssey. And that is something which my research group in particular within Illumina has been devoting the last 10 years to tackling. And we put out an appeal at almost every conference to say, have you got any problems that you can't solve with the genome? Tell them to us and we'll see if we can do something about it. That is what's happened here. I would also say, just to be clear, we'll see if we can do something about it. We can't offer the answer tomorrow, even of a diagnosis. If we can make progress, we will certainly be able to, I hope, offer diagnoses. That needs your help, the help of each and every one of you and the other cases that are not in the room. We need your help to be able to see the disease. If you can see the disease, unlike those doctors that Catherine, you were talking to, you can begin to hope that you can see the cause of the disease. And if you see the cause of the disease, there is just a chance that other scientists and other researchers can start developing a treatment that can actually affect a cure. I have experienced this entire journey, not personally, but my left-hand man, or my right-hand man, I should say, my colleague, Ryan Taft, who spent many years on leukodystrophy. It's another very similar condition. And they went all the way to finding the cause. And then a few years later, there was a drug, and it does actually correct the condition in the early stages of development. Thankfully, Catherine, I think you said you have some effective treatment already, which ameliorates the symptoms. That's a very long road to go down, but let's just come back to the genome for a moment before I say thank you in advance for all your assistance. What we will be able to do, and what my group has been involved in and what Illumina has been involved in, is going from that one first genome to the 100,000 genomes. And we did 70,000 genomes in 1 year back in 2018. And so that illustrates what the ensuing 20 years of technology development have allowed us to bring to individuals, to people in an affordable way to actually be able to do that very genetic test that Catherine was so keen to see done. And we would like to embark upon applying this test in a research program to be able to see why we can't see Ring20 and whether we can see Ring20. There's been a lot talked about of the challenges. If you do a karyotype and you see a ring chromosome, it's pretty obvious. Surely we should be able to see it. But it's not that simple. And Alison has already mentioned the mosaics. Not every cell in your body has the ring, and some rings have not been found at all. It's not that easy. But it is nevertheless a change in DNA. It's a change in the genome. And I very much hope that as we move forward, we can sequence genomes very quickly. It takes us rather longer to look through the masses of information, 3 billion letters of the alphabet, to find the very small changes that actually give rise to the ring or indeed to any other disease. And that is what we want to do. So what we're very keen to do is to be able to with your permission, with the permission of the patient, to be able to sequence a few of the cases to see what we know what we're looking for with people who've already had a diagnosis. So if we know what we're looking for, we really should be able to find it. We need to go straight to chromosome 20. We need to go straight to the tips of chromosome 20 and see if we can actually see it. And I think that's what we'd like to do. We know in advance that some will be more difficult than others because they're mosaic. That does reduce the signal. It doesn't eliminate it, but we can adjust for that. And then we can finally maybe start to be looking at individuals who might have Ring20 and might not. And that brings us back to this core problem of diagnostic uncertainty. There may be many more out there. There may be many poor people with epileptic syndromes, and there are lots of epilepsies. David Cameron's son was an epilepsy, and that was not Ring20, that was something else. It too remained undiagnosed at the time of Ivan's death. And since then, we embarked upon a research project, and we now know exactly how to diagnose Ivan's condition and others like him. So that's what we want to do with Ring20 if we possibly can. Well, we are not guaranteeing that we can get the answer straight away and simply. Sequencing the genome is easy. Understanding it and providing a diagnosis can be very difficult. But my research group would certainly be very interested in beginning to ask some of the basic questions that remain unanswered today, very cognizant of the underdiagnosis, and also very cognizant of the fact that the existing diagnosis service is reducing in the health service. And we really hope to be able to bring this study to a better place. And because of this, this will inevitably benefit other conditions, other epilepsy-like conditions, because the same test is operated by us, the genome test, no matter what the phenotype is, no matter what the condition is. And so we will continue to learn more and focus better our tools to actually get the results that each and every one of you and all of those who have no answer yet would actually like to get to. So that's my pledge, to do what I can to help. It would be wonderful to have a breakthrough in this area. We're not always fortunate with our breakthroughs, but I'd certainly love to help. Shirley, back to you.
Thank you so much, David. So David's highlighted a little bit of what we really want to achieve and what the goal is there. And it's not going to be straightforward, as he said, and we really need your help. So we've had lots of discussions with Alison and other members of the team over the last year, thinking about how can we do this. And as David said, one of the things that would be really helpful for us is in the long term, if we could look at people who are already diagnosed, because we know the diagnosis is there, so therefore we know what we're looking for. But to get to that point, we don't want to just ask for volunteers at all. We want to do two phases really in this project with you. And Alison and I will talk a little bit more about how you could immediately be involved near the end of this. But we want this to be something that the Ring20 community takes forward, so there might be some of you on this call who are saying, well, we've already got our diagnosis, what's in it for us, why look at genomes, why can't we just fight for karyotype testing to continue, and all those sorts of questions. And we want to explore those with you. So over the next year, we want to spend time through workshops, through getting together and discussing what those questions might be. And some of them might still be, basic questions about, well, what does the genome do? What's the genome going to tell us? Why look at the genome? Why is diagnosis even important in this? And, because of your experiences, I think, and we hear this again and again in the rare disease community about the importance of diagnosis, but this also becomes important for us taking further afield with other epilepsies, with other rare conditions, to really stress the importance of diagnosis and to get diagnosis right. We also want to think about this in terms of leaving a really great footprint. So thinking about how, what we're hoping to do here is actually quite different. This hasn't necessarily been done in this sort of collaboration before. And, so there's going to be lots of things for us to explore. Illumina is an industry. So what does it mean for Ring20 to partner with industry? What are the questions there? And what would consent need to look like? So what are the questions that you're going to need to have answered before we even get to the point of starting to think about genomes and exploring genomes and conducting the genomic research? So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I think I want to hand back to Alison now, because I think she wants to talk a little bit with some of the other people on the panel about where this fits with some of the other initiatives that have been developed. Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Shirley. Get quite echoey there. So thank you to both Shirlene and David for the session. I am conscious that I've got the rather difficult job of squeezing 30 minutes of content into the next 15 minutes. So I will hold questions for our panelist all together and introduce Professor Suberi, who is going to talk to us about how the work that Illumina is going to overtake over the next 12 months will coincide with the National History and Biomarker Study. So good evening, Professor Suberi.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you to Alison, and thank you to all the participants for joining us for this important AGM with this important announcement. I think it's really exciting that Ring20 Research and Support are collaborating with Illumina on this project. As a clinician, I've certainly seen a reduction in diagnoses over the last 10 years or so. We have a heightened awareness in my particular hospital of ring chromosome 20, so we often do the karyotype testing, but at international meetings, we're constantly having to tell colleagues, remember the karyotype in drug-resistant epilepsies. So as you know, Ring20 Research and Support and all its members raised lots of money, and we were delighted that you awarded a grant to the Glasgow team for a natural history and biomarker study. Now, the plans for that prior to this pandemic were for a minimum of 20 people with ring chromosome 20 to come to Glasgow, have detailed neuroimaging, detailed neuropsychology, have blood samples taken, have also possibly skin biopsies taken to look to do more research into ring chromosome 20, the genetic markers, and see whether there are any neuroimaging markers on a special scanner we've got in Glasgow, which is a 7T scanner. Now, unfortunately, all those plans with the pandemic have been thrown up in the air, and we're not sure when we can have people coming back for research. A lot of research that's not linked to COVID has been stopped within the NHS. So we're planning on redesigning the study a little bit to think more about involving more people with ring chromosome 20 internationally, using more questionnaire-based assessments, but we can also collect blood samples, perhaps saliva samples from individuals with ring chromosome 20 within an ethical framework, which is determined by the National Research Ethics Service of the UK. So with all the appropriate consents, and then we can partner with colleagues in Illumina to share the DNA samples that we collect. And then, because we will have the detailed neuropsychological evaluations, the detailed history of the patients, the detailed EEG studies of the patients, we can perhaps link that together with the genetic findings. So I think through these partnerships where we have clinical neurologists, we have patient organizations, and we have industry and basic scientists, we can move this field forward. It is exceedingly challenging, but one of the things I've learned as I've been involved with ring chromosome 20 is Alison particularly is not daunted by a challenge. I've been incredibly impressed by how she's pushed the boundaries of various different areas to get this project off the ground through her enthusiasm and meeting people. Just a couple of weeks ago, through a discussion with Alison, I was at a meeting with the Food and Drug Administration in the States. And now we're going to be talking to the FDA about how they think about drug trials and how they think about licensing drugs so that people with ring chromosome 20 can get into those drug trials and can get access to some of the new medications. So I'm really excited that the Natural History and Biomarker Study can collaborate with David and Shirlene and the team in Illumina to push forward this field. And hopefully we can get more diagnoses and understand a little bit more. Also, if we can recognize the diagnosis through genomics, then I think we will probably also get some more clues about the underlying pathophysiology of ring chromosome 20, which will then give us clues to perhaps new treatment pathways. And I think that's where we all want to get to in the end. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor. I'm going to turn to our final speakers for this evening, and I do apologise if I get this wrong. It's Professor Alexis Azimalogu. I may have got that wrong, do apologise, and Professor Helen Cross to bring together the final piece of our announcement this evening around Epicare and the research that will bring alongside the other two studies.
Ellen, you want to?
I've got my video. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Neil. Maybe Ellen can talk before me because she has another obligation.
Well, no. I don't have to go till 7:30. You start, Alexis. Would you want me to start? That's fine.
No, that's fine. I can do it. But ladies first.
Okay, I think the issue, why is it Alexis and myself? Well, we are joint coordinators of the European Reference Network for Rare and Complex Epilepsies, Epicare. This was initiated as myself as coordinator in 2017, and owing to that elephant in the room of Brexit, we as a UK coordinator had to hand that over to a European coordinator. So although we hope to be still involved and the UK centres are still involved, then we've handed the coordination over to Leon and Alexis. What I wanted to start off with was the fact that, we've already heard about this evening, and I don't have to explain to this group, the difficulties there are in diagnosis, the diagnostic odyssey, and the fact that we really have to think about the diagnosis when requesting the investigation, because we need to do it in a very specific way and make sure that the genetics labs have really looked for the abnormality, and hence why we need to look at other ways of doing this. And as has already been said, we used to routinely perform a karyotype, which is looking at the chromosomes on a presentation of individuals with epilepsy. People don't tend to do that anymore. They go straight for genomics, and that misses these diagnoses. However, we're also very aware that not only is the diagnosis difficult, the individual clinicians have to think about that, and therefore, as we think about an increasing number of epilepsies as rare diseases, and ring chromosome 20 is one of those rare diseases, we need to educate healthcare providers or healthcare professionals, not least around Europe and elsewhere, about the diagnosis, what the clinical features, and indeed when they need to look for that. And ultimately, as Alison again has already highlighted, there is no registry, and we want to form registries of many different rare diseases, again, not least of ring chromosome 20, so we know where individuals are in order to indeed consider clinical trials. Research is, we've talked about diagnostic difficulty. We also then have to look at the research and why there's research difficulty. And that's, again, because of the difficulty finding numbers, collecting individuals together to look at what research can indeed take place and look at further treatments. And that is what forms, the diagnostic difficulty, finding the individuals' registries, and then ongoing collective research is what pushed us into actually asking or requesting and applying for a European reference network of rare and complex epilepsies, one of 24 networks. And this is currently of 28 centres with a further 15, I think, associate centres across Europe, where are specialised at looking at rare and complex epilepsies and want to bring things together, as Alexis will now further explain.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ellen. If you like, I will just share my screen. Well, as Ellen said a minute ago, for us, it was really very important to be able to develop a network specific for rare epilepsies. Because, you know, I heard the different talks, and we all know the difficulties of diagnosing specifically a Ring20, and even more the treatment issues that many of you raised during the discussion. Now, this being said, we should always keep in mind that at least for the moment, for the great majority of the rare epilepsies, the treatments are just symptomatic of the seizures. Unfortunately, we do not have yet specific treatments for specific syndromes. And even for some of them that are a bit more frequent and that we know a little bit better which anti-seizure drug is probably to be used first than the other, usually they don't work. And again, we are just trying to reduce the symptoms. So I fully understand the importance of a specific diagnosis, particularly for the parents and the patients. But just it's a message not to feel alone, because in fact, once at least the epileptic nature is diagnosed from someone, the chances of having an appropriate treatment are unfortunately still low for the majority of the diseases with rare epilepsies. Now, where is the hope in the whole story? Well, one of them is the slide I'm showing. We are now 42 centers across Europe with highly specific tools to diagnose. The idea is to increase these centers even further in the years to come, and above all, and most importantly, to create national networks that would allow a smaller center, a smaller hospital to ask for advice or have collaboration. And this for me is extremely important, because I don't believe that all doctors can know all rare disorders. I mean, this is practically impossible. There are even above 7,000 or 8,000 of these diseases, each one with some specificities. And as I always say, when they tell me about the chances of a genetic abnormality, I say, yes, but for the parents of the child is 100%. It's not 50, it's not 60. They have one child or two, and they just want to know about their own child, which is absolutely normal. So I think that this initiative of the European Union is extremely important, because I can assure you, and I'm sure Ellen agrees, it created a huge dynamic between the centers around the rare disorders. And epilepsy was not on the list initially. We were somewhere in the middle of the neurological disorders, and it was a group of us, about 10 or 12, really motivated, together with the international league that supported us, and said, no, rare epilepsies need a specific network because of all the specificities you keep highlighting and underscoring during this discussion. So this is extremely important, and it is hope for the future. Now, just a word on how this is structured. As you can see, we are trying to cover the maximum of whatever concerns the epilepsies. The structure of the network itself has a number of diagnostic modules that involve many doctors of different centers, laboratory diagnostics, neuroimaging, neurophysiology, neuropsychology, and the other part is more therapeutic modules, both targeted medical therapies, which is the future. Surgery, when it is applied, is not the case on Ring20, but there is one. Neonatal seizures, dietary treatments, and so on. And then you have a number of, let's say, transversal structures that work more on what you were discussing the last hour. One, have a registry of the rare diseases. This is ongoing. A specific grant was given, and it's Professor Laga from Belgium, together with Helen Cross, that are building this registry, and that will include all rare epilepsies. So we can know where they are. We can know who to contact, which center to contact when a new treatment comes out or a new diagnostic tool comes out. And behind this, there is also a huge amount of work on education and training and genetic research and clinical trials done by the same groups that are really involved in further developing this. We recently even created an epilepsy research council that we considered it transversal to all, again, to try to put together whatever the future whatever we can develop in the future for all the rare epilepsies. And of course, the other component, and it's not Ring20, you can be assured, is very well represented, is the network of patients. Alison is doing a fantastic work for Ring chromosome 20, and she is not alone. There are other parents from other rare diseases that are really constituting part of the network of Epicare, that we are trying together with them, despite the problems related to language, for example, which sometimes is an issue for the patients because parents in Italy or in Greece or in Romania do not necessarily speak English. But we still try to enlarge this as much as possible and develop pathways of care that would accelerate both the diagnosis for all these rare diseases and, of course, access to the best treatments or to clinical trials. You all know, even from the COVID adventure, how long and difficult it is sometimes to find the treatment, to validate it, to be sure that this treatment is safe for the patients. It is an extremely long process. And it is not that the medical community or the researchers do not have the will to work more on Ring20 versus the Dravet or versus another genetic epilepsy. It is too simply that all these forms of epilepsies are extremely complex. And of course, a discovery in one rare disease can help the other. And that is why we are trying to advance them together and not consider them as separate entities. So I think I would stop there. Of course, I would be glad to answer any questions. I hope I gave you some hope with the presence of a network across Europe, at least, that we are building. We are still young, we are still 4 years old, but we have a long future, apparently. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And it's great to see how collaborative we can be as a human race when faced with complex disorders. So the opportunity now to ask our esteemed guest questions. And so you have the question and answer feature on Zoom, or you can raise your hand. The first question of the evening goes to Shirlene from Reuben. The Illumina project, is that only possible for families in the UK, or do we intend to seek families internationally?
Thanks for that question, Ruben. I think I've just posted a response in the chat, and Samir mentioned in his discussion that if we align with the natural history study, the natural history and biomarker study, I think the hope is that we will be as international as possible and be able to collect samples through local collaborators. But I do want to just say that at this stage, we still have a lot to iron out and a lot to plan in terms of how this will occur, what's needed in that process. And that is part of what we'd like to invite you, the families of Ring20 Research and Support Group, to help us with as we start to map out what needs to be included, what you would want to be included, and how we go about that. Samir and David, is that a fair response?
Yes, from my perspective, yes, definitely. I think we have to, these processes all have to be done within an ethical framework. And the UK has a very robust but very highly structured National Research Ethics Service, which we could apply to. Once we apply in one place, it's applicable throughout the UK. But we also have to take in slightly different legislation sometimes in Scotland and England and Northern Ireland. And also when we work with industry partners, there's different things to so it's not a simple process, but it's certainly a surmountable process that we get through.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that's, Samir, you've really nicely indicated a couple of times about the ethical process, and that's something that is on our agenda to discuss with you all, so that you help us shape that a little bit as well. So, what you would consider as being acceptable or not acceptable. And we really want to leave a good footprint here in terms of the best ethical process that we possibly can.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to do my best, David Dimbleby, in question time and pass one to Dr. Bentley from Tim. How does the genetic testing work? Is it a blood test? And will it be a blood test and then a sample sent to the Illumina Centre for analysis?
Essentially, yes to both questions. It is a blood sample which provides plenty of material of an individual's DNA, which then needs to be extracted, possibly locally. And then the DNA would be sent to my own laboratory in Luminar for sequencing as part of the collaboration, which anybody would be very welcome to visit and chat and find out more about the process. I would also involve my colleagues. I mentioned my right-hand man, Ryan Taft, who has the most experience of this, and he actually works in San Diego. In my other group, I recruited him, but he's based in San Diego. So we would involve other people in the analysis, the searching for the needles in the haystack, and I think he has already recently been looking at ring chromosomes and particular features of those ring chromosomes, which might suggest a way forward for us to examine the DNA. So the DNA sequencing would be done in just outside Cambridge, where Charlene and I are both based when we're not locked down anyway. And the analysis might be broader than that to take advantage of the expertise that we have. And at some point we would potentially engage other collaborators as well, particularly as we move not just from Ring20, but we learn from other rings. And as we learn more, we might be able to look more broadly at epilepsies and our experience with those. As Samir has answered, the international perspective is enormously valuable. So we hope for that level of inclusivity. We have encountered a number of people who, of course, they only ever see one case in their clinic in their lifetime. But then now that you have the internet, now that you have the international connectivity, of course, they find other people who have only ever seen one case in another continent. And within days, you suddenly start to see the commonalities and the patterns. And we very much hope that happens again in this case. So the international and inclusive elements of this are really important to us as well.
Excellent, thank you. A question I guess I'm going to open up to fastest finger first. Are we extending the sampling to parents and siblings to see traces of a possible genetic link?
Well, I would like to be the first to press the buzzer there for a moment for a very practical reason. That is quite simply, we can tell a lot more about the specific alterations in the patient by looking at the parents as well. So if the parents are available and willing to be part of the study, and siblings too, it actually helps the research. Of course, if we have a diagnosis in an individual, that result can then be directly mapped onto the other individuals to help with looking at the potential family trait. I have no clue about the inheritance or otherwise of Ring20. I would imagine it is largely not inherited. But clearly we may find other genetic factors which contribute to the diagnosis. And maybe there are some patients with the same phenotype that do not have the ring. So the genetics, it's a complex and large data set to research into, but absolutely family members and siblings, if you are willing to contribute, to consent and to participate, we would very much like to manage, in the same way as managing the confidential and ethical nature of handling the patient samples, we absolutely would benefit potentially from family inclusion.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to test the skills of Jake in our technical suite because Yvonne has raised her hand, and I don't know if we can unmute Yvonne and allow her to ask her question herself.
Okay, is that working?
It is. Hello, good evening.
Splendid. Hello. Hi, everybody.
Oh,
we've
lost it.
No, still there.
That
Hello.
better?
That's better.
Okay. What I'd like to know is, what do you want us to do? Because we'll do anything, basically. So if you, I mean, we are a family of four, if you want all of us. My daughter Lydia has chromosome 20. All you got to do is tell us where to be and we'll be there. Is that helpful or not helpful?
It's very helpful. I will answer the first part of thanking you and turn it back to Charlene for more of the what do we really do from here. in general terms, that of course we have a well-established process that's been done for 100,000 and more cases, where we actually seek informed consent. So we make sure that you already do, but in general terms, we often have people who know less about being tested with the genome. So we rely on the importance of a consultation and a consent for each family member. Of course, children may be consented by their parents or their guardians. And so that's the process before we go anywhere else. So it's initial engagement with a clinical geneticist or counselor to explain the details and the implications of what we're doing, because we are clearly going to feed back information to you about your family and not just you, or implications for the family, and that requires careful management. Also to reassure you in the sense that because we have done a great deal, we have jumped through many hoops in terms of confidentiality and data protection and data security, and we are fully compliant with all those levels of privacy and confidentiality and security in terms of data management. And GDPR, for those of you who know about it, the Data Protection Act that came into being a year ago, certainly, I think quite appropriately, put a level of extra caution into this work. But we've been guided by the UK, by professionals and by government to ensure that we have everything in place for that security. So hopefully to reassure you that participating, it will be a safe and hopefully very beneficial experience. So love to have your involvement. Charlene.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that and say thank you so much, Yvonne. It's really wonderful to hear that. I think there's two very practical ways that you can help us. One is, as David said, that once we get to that point, it will be brilliant to welcome you into that study, and alongside Samir and the natural history and biomarker study. But I think there's maybe, Alison, would this be a good time to mention what we do need to make a call for? And I'd really like to appeal to you here, Yvonne, is we would really like to ask that a number of you work with Alison and I and the team to start thinking about how do we move this forward. So there's going to be a couple of things that we're going to do. As David's mentioned, and Samir's mentioned, there's a number of ethical issues for us to overcome and to make sure that there's a really strong footprint of best possible practice here. So we want a team of people who can start to ask the hard questions with us, and even just not the hard questions, the questions that actually might just be on everyone's lips right now in terms of, you know, the whys, the hows, the practicalities, so that it gets spelt out really clearly. So Alison and I would really love to ask that, you know, there may be a small group of you who would be willing to support us as we go forward and as we make the next steps. And we'd like to meet regularly. So we'd like to also have broader workshops where we discuss some of the issues. And, you know, this is a chance for you as a community to really, you know, I guess for us to be really prevalent in terms of what's going on with genomics, how it can assist diagnosis and, you know, to help with other rare conditions and to help with other rare epilepsies in terms of leading the way here. So that's possibly the first simple request, and then the second will be to join in whenever we're having workshops to discuss and to try and nail down this process leading to the genomic study. Is that, Alison, would you like to add anything here?
Thanks, Shirley. I think that's kind of made it really quite clear. So we're going to spend some time during 2021 shaping the way ready for the major research into the genomics and the work that David and his teams will actually do. And we want to spend that time working with all of our Ring20 families, making sure that you're all informed. I'm sure you all have lots of questions about what's the genome? What are they talking about? Why is this important to me? I'm already diagnosed. How does this impact me? How can this benefit me? And we want to take all of those questions and have workshops, probably online like this initially because of social distancing, but maybe later in the year there may be a possibility to bring some people together face to face, which would be truly fantastic. So there will be opportunities for all of you to get involved. We want to ensure that you have an opportunity to answer all of your questions, that we try to find the right people to give you those answers, and we will involve whoever we need to get to that position. And we hope to spend also this time to get the ethical frameworks in place and the consent in place, so that we are in a position by the end of next year to be able to say we are ready for a big phase 2, the true research to see if we can find what's going on in the genome and diagnose more cases, but also understand. We all know we have a diagnosis of Ring20, but what does that mean? And none of us really understands that just yet. But maybe this new research will find the clues. And if we have those clues, maybe, just maybe, we will be on the pathway to finding better treatments that might actually work in the future. So this is really, really exciting. And what Charlene has said is, to help us do all of this work over the next year, we're just going to need a few of you to maybe work together with us, just maybe 2 or 3 or 4 individuals, whether you're an individual with Ring20 or you're a parent or carer of someone with Ring20, to help us shape what we do over the next year with the families, for the families, so that it makes sense to all of you, it answers your questions, and it prepares us for the next step. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. Fantastic. Thank you for that. For those that have posted questions that we've not gotten to, Alison will make sure that you receive an answer at the end of the event and follow up with our esteemed guests. I'm conscious that Zoom very kindly donated the stage for us this evening at no cost for 2 hours. It's almost a bit like a rock band clearing out the venue at the end of a wedding. So unfortunately, Kim, you do have the final agenda item of the evening to round us off with the numbers. But I'm sure everyone will stay fully attentive throughout.
I do hope so. That's if I can get myself working. Right, here we go. The really, really exciting part of the agenda. I'm pleased to present the accounts for Ring20 for the April 2019 to March 2020 period for the first time since taking over the Treasurer's role. I would briefly like to take this opportunity to introduce myself to those of you I've not met. I've worked as a bookkeeper and accountant for nearly 30 years and have run my own practice since 2012. I've been involved with charities for many years now, and I'm delighted to bring that knowledge and experience to support Ring20 in its endeavours. The accounts have been prepared in accordance with the relevant Charity Commission requirements and company law. The accounts offer a true and fair view of the charity's financial affairs to date. As total income for the period was below 25,000, no audit of the accounts was needed. Ring20, as we are all aware, is an extremely uncommon form of epilepsy that is difficult to diagnose and treat. As a charity, we rely on both donations and fundraising to cover ongoing costs, as well as towards offering vital support to those with the condition and to finance research. These funds also come from charitable trusts, companies, local groups, as well as individuals like yourself. The charity was being overseen and run by several volunteers last year, and this has continued into this year also. Volunteers have stepped up from varied backgrounds and with varied experience and knowledge. This has meant that the charity has been able to keep running despite most admin, finance, communication and management roles occupied by volunteers. As mentioned earlier, the Big Give gave the charity some much needed funds towards the Next Families Conference. Thank you to everyone who contributed or helped facilitate the fundraising towards the Christmas Challenge 2019. Efforts made resulted in the Hospital Saturday Fund match funding donations raised. A total of 9,424 was raised by way of donation and the match funding given to the charity by HSF. The charity also received 3 substantial grants towards the funding of the comic workshop and production project, allowing the comic to be crafted and realised. The rest of the income came from both corporate and individual donations and fundraising. As a result, it was decided to move some of the unrestricted funds into a designated fund to contribute toward the comic workshop's ongoing activity. Most notably, the highest expenditure for the period occurred in communications. An outsourced social media company was engaged over the course of the year. The 7,580 spent on this was covered by way of a grant that had been awarded in the previous financial year. The comic workshop and subsequent production of the first comic were funded by utilising £5,039 of restricted and £4,430 of designated funds. As the previous year's accounts needed to be audited, that is for financial year 2019, £1,200 of audit fees were paid in this financial year. No provision had been made for this in the previous year's accounts. The charity's statement of financial affairs is limited to cash assets, that it holds no other assets nor has any liabilities presently. Cash assets, that is all cash funds that are held by the charity in its current and savings accounts, have risen in the financial year 2020 by £3,360 to £87,240. In 2019, the figure was £83,880. As the charity heads towards the end of December 2020, we must be mindful that COVID-19 will continue to impact fundraising and donations into the final quarter of financial year 21, as well as into 22. Although we have been successful with several COVID-19 related grants, others, like the Big Lottery Genes for Genes grant that was awarded but not paid, which have been applied for to help contribute towards the next Families Conference, will be harder to come by presently. We therefore hugely appreciate and welcome any support with ongoing donations at this present time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Very appreciative there, a very detailed run through. And thank you to everyone that has donated this year as well. Jake, if we could have the resolutions. There are 3 votes on the screen for our members. The annual report that Alison delivered, the finances and the activities that you've heard today. So if we could see that poll on the screen, if you're still with us, Jake. There we are. So all our members, the resolution 1 is for the annual report. Resolution 2 is for the big announcement and the activities with Illumina. And resolution 3 is the accounts. Will all members please say yes or no in support of those resolutions? There we are. Thank you, Jake. Can we progress through? Fantastic. Excellent. So the final piece of this evening is to elect trustees. So those members that volunteer as trustees do step down on a regular basis. This year it is Chris Sullivan, and the trustees would like to nominate his re-election to trustee. I don't know if we have a poll that will take care of this, but I think somebody, Lydia, has proposed and voted in support. Excellent, thank you. So the final item is for any other business, any other items that members or panelists or volunteers wish to raise before we close this evening. Either raise your hand to vote or use the question and answer function. Excellent. So nothing appearing there. So I would like to thank our panel for joining us this evening and giving time out of their busy day and for updating us on all the exciting work that thank you me to Alison for all of the outstanding work that she's done after charity almost 24/7 and keeps us all in check on what we need to do moving forward. We are actively advertising for trustees and volunteers to help continue our work next year. Please do get in touch with Alison if you'd like to offer any support in any activities at all moving forward. Thank you all for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this evening, and anyone that has asked a question but not had it answered will receive their answer in the coming days. Thank you all. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.